Welcome to the Bourbon Case Files. This is Nick, and I'm here with Louis Berk, and we are drinking Buffalo Trace today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Excellent.
Very excited to try out Buffalo Trace.
All right. Now let me ask you: have you tried Buffalo Trace before?
I have tried it with you, I'm sure, at some point, but I do not recall exactly when or where I was.
Okay. Well, what I'd love to do is, again, I know you're more of a Scotch guy.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to get your interpretation of what you have here, what it tastes like to you, what flavors you're getting, and how, if you think this might be a good intro bourbon for someone that maybe is trying it out, used to drinking Scotch or something like that.
Let's do it. Cheers.
All right.
Yeah, that's good. That is good. Smooth.
It is. It is
very smooth.
It is. It's so Buffalo Trace is one of the big distillers. Has a ton of famous other bottles that they're known for, and this is their namesake. Buffalo Trace in 2013 was actually made a historical landmark in the U.S. And so when you go there and you do a tour of the Buffalo Trace distillery, you get to check this out and taste this and taste many of their other brands. So it's a very, very good bourbon, very entry level.
I would agree. Listen, again, if I've had it before, I feel like I probably have, but don't necessarily remember that. But I remember this right now, and it is actually very smooth. Very smooth. I'd buy this all day.
So what's crazy about Buffalo Trace is you go back 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, you could not find Buffalo Trace on the shelves in Florida. I mean, nowhere. We would actually take trips, and when we were driving to South Carolina for a golf tournament, we'd stop in Georgia, and there was a specific liquor store along I-95 you could pull off, and Georgia would get a great supply. And so we'd actually pick up a bottle for every guy at the golf tournament and then kind of hand it out as gifts when we got to the tournament. Spent 4 days playing golf and having drinks. But lately, in the last 6 months or so, there's been a surplus of them. And so it's been pretty awesome to be able to find them now. I think it's $29.99 a bottle.
Wow. So what was the difference? Why 3 years ago you couldn't find it and now you can find it?
My understanding is that they increased their production by about 50% because of the supply and demand on the Buffalo Trace. So they significantly increased that, made it more available. There were some concerns because recently they had the flooding there as to how that's going to affect things. I don't think it would have hit the market just yet, but I guess we'll find out in a couple years if they had any damage to any of the barrels that were in there and if that's going to affect future sales coming out or not. My
thing for me, I'm a Scotch guy. I'm not necessarily a bourbon guy. I've gotten into bourbon a lot more because of you. But this is very good, actually. And if it's $30, that's a great starter kit for sure.
It is. So what's the big difference when you experience between the Scotch, that I know you've been accustomed to and enjoy and bourbon? What do you notice is the big difference?
For me, in alcohol in general, it's smoothness, right? So for me, when I drink Scotch, and just like in bourbon, there's different levels, and it's when I talk about levels, it doesn't have to be levels in terms of price, but for me, there's different levels in terms of taste. And I'm a guy, as I've gotten older, where I like to drink things, alcohol on the rocks. I'm not a big mixed drink kind of guy. I'm not so if I'm going to drink it and I'm going to put it on the rocks, or just drink it straight up like this, I want it to be smooth. So for me, it used to be a point when I was in law school, even maybe just graduated, my go-to was Black Label. Like, I thought Black Label was like good, smooth, it was awesome. As I got older, made a little bit more money, my go-to now is Blue Label. And Blue Label to me obviously is even more smooth than Black Label. And for me, that's kind of how I measure things. Same thing with tequila. If I'm drinking tequila, I want something smooth. But again, you and I have had bourbons in the past where they might be considered a high level in terms of price, but I would argue that this $30 bottle Dude, this is very good, and it's very smooth. I would drink this all day.
I agree, and that's why it's such a good seller.
Yeah.
Because it is a great bourbon that if you're getting used to developing your palate, that you can sit there and sip it with just about anything. You get a little spicy cinnamon, maybe a little black pepper flavoring, but it has a pretty smooth ending. So it's very good, very good.
Let me ask you. So we're sitting here, and behind me I see like a wall of diplomas. So like what am I looking at, Nick? What are all these diplomas?
You're looking at a lot of school and a lot of tests. That's what you're looking at.
How much does it cost you, man?
Well, so that's I went to University of Florida for undergrad.
Yeah.
And then I went there for law school as well. So I'm a double gator. And then you're seeing all of the
champs.
That's right.
Champs.
Basketball national champs this year.
Champs.
Which that brings me back. The year I graduated law school was our first basketball national championship. So that was back in 2006. So that's what that is. And then all the different, I guess, the Supreme Court certificates are the different states that I'm licensed in. So I was initially licensed in Florida. The firm I used to work for, where we met, when I joined there, they had an office in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they said, "Will you oversee that office?" And I said, "Sure." And they initially, I was able to do what's called pro hoc vice, which you kind of like wave in, and you have an attorney from New Mexico, that signs off on you, and I did that on like 15 or 20 cases in a year. And amazingly, the next year, the New Mexico bar passed this rule that you could only pro hoc into 5 cases a year. And I joke around, and I'm like, you know what? That might have been because of me. Yeah. Like that might have been the Nick Norton law, but
it probably was.
So they didn't like me practicing from Florida, so that's fine. So I took the New Mexico bar, and I passed, and then the firm I was at said, "Wait, we're going to open an office in Colorado." I said, "All right, I just studied for one, I'll take the other." So I took the Colorado bar, and then I waved into Arizona as well, and DC. So I'm licensed in all those jurisdictions, and hopefully I will never take another bar exam as long as I live, because that it is not a lot of fun.
I took one, man. I took one, and that was enough for me. I'm all for waving in, but taking another bar. I joke around, but really I don't. When I have people, or even employees like, "Hey, I want to go to law school," I always say like, "Why? Like, why do you want to put yourself through that?" Or once they graduate law school and they're going to take the bar, I'm like, "Well, that's literally for me." And I'm not a person that I've never liked books, and so it's actually kind of funny. And I'm talking about like I never liked to study, I never liked school, and I remember when I was in undergrad, and then I was thinking about going to law school. Everybody was laughing. They're like, "Bro, you hated high school, and then you hated college." It took me, like, dead serious. It took me 7.5 years to graduate undergrad, and it was really because I was working.
You were enjoying life.
I was enjoying life. I was working. I was making money, and I was part time for a long time, but I always hated school. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to law school. And in law school, you couldn't graduate law school in 7.5 years. You have to do it's 3 years or whatever, or 4 years, I guess, if you do part time. So there's really no, you can't really mess around and do extend it out to 7 years. So I graduated in 3 years. But when I took the bar, I said, you know what, I'm gonna go all out. I'm gonna study whatever it was, 12 to 15 hours a day. For 12 weeks and just get it done the first time around, man. And then I made a promise I'll never take that again. So
listen, it was one of the most miserable experiences of my life, having to work full time and then go with kids, with my daughter, and then go home and study for 4 hours every night to prepare for that bar. Yeah, probably would not do that again, but it was an experience, and we get to help people kind of all over the country with what we do. So it's pretty cool.
It is cool. It is cool, man.
And it gives me the opportunity to travel. And, the cool thing about traveling when you're into bourbon is different states have different laws about how they sell bourbon. And so I will go on these trips and find bourbon in stores that you can't find here in Florida, or you'll get lucky and get it for a very reasonable price. So it's
that is a very cool trade-off. And I actually have other buddies that are heavily into bourbon like you are, and they say the same thing. And it's funny because for me, I love aligning myself with people like you because you understand not only bourbon, but also wine very much. Like it's funny because when we were at the CKC event, the Cannonball Kids Cancer event, there was like a bidding for, the wine, and it went crazy. I think it's like these 20 bottles sold for like 10 grand or whatever it was, And I was going to look at you and be like, hey man, should I keep bidding? Like, should I keep going? But, I trust your knowledge when it comes to wine. I trust your knowledge when, obviously, this is a bourbon show when it comes to bourbon. But for me, I would probably go to these liquor stores in Colorado or in Arizona or, Texas or wherever, right? And there could probably be a crazy deal on a crazy rare rare bourbon, and I wouldn't even notice it. And you probably would.
It's true. It's true. There's actually a really cool app that you can get where you can actually track your collection. And I will say that I do have all my bourbons scanned in on it. But it tells you like how common they are, like common, uncommon, rare, unicorn, or impossible to find. And so you can actually track like where your collection stands up and what percentage do you have of common bourbons versus rare bourbons and things like that. So certainly if you're ever traveling, and I should make sure you have that. So if you see something that's a unicorn or impossible, you make sure to pick it up from me.
Basically, I'm gonna share my calendar with you. So every time I go away on vacation, you could know where I am in the world, and I can go ahead and pick up some bourbon for you.
I think that's very important, and my wife would appreciate that. Well, on that note, I think we've had a pretty good episode, and I appreciate you for joining me, Louis. As always good to have you on, and thank you all for listening. And hopefully you'll follow us. It shows great support when you do. Like us, and we'll see you on the next one.